And welcome back to Red Card. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. Right now, we go out to California to talk with Ives Galarcep of Soccer by Ives, one of the best in the business, and a guy you got to follow on Twitter because he's got all the scoops, all the rumors, and all the analysis. Ives, Happy New Year, and thanks again for making time, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Anthony. Happy New Year to you.
Appreciate it. Ives, let's get right into it. Let's start out with a young man, first and foremost, that has been in the news the last 2 to 3 weeks. That's Jordan Morris. We hear there is an imminent signing with Seattle Sounders. I'm afraid this young man's going to start 2016 with a ton of pressure, a ton of stress to succeed with the amount of accolades he's received. Do you think he will fold under pressure, or do you feel that this kid is the real deal?
Well, number one, I do think he's the real deal. I think he's very talented. As far as the pressure goes, I think actually going to Seattle is a good situation for him because it's not like he's going to a bad team that he has to try to carry. He's going to a team that has star players who are going to be the faces of the team, and Obafemi Martins and Clint Dempsey, and those guys are going to spearhead the attack, and he can kind of, be that kind of third musketeer in their attack, and I think he's going to do well there.
Let's talk about Benny Feilhaber of Sporting Kansas City. He rips into Team USA head coach Jurgen Klinsmann. He didn't shed any words. He got right into what he felt that needed to be said, and he said it. Your thoughts? Did you agree with him spewing what he needed to say?
I don't know if I would have necessarily gone the same direction that he would have gone as far as that goes, but I can understand his frustration. He's played really well for a couple of years now, but he hasn't been called in. And you know what? When it comes down to it, every national team coach has his players that he likes, has his guys he doesn't like, and Klinsmann's a big believer in kind of the chemistry of the group. And the sense that I get is that, Feilhaber has, when he has been in before, he hasn't made enough of an impact for Klinsmann to kind of continuously call him in. I do think Feilhaber had a great season, obviously, with Sporting KC, but it would have taken a lot to overcome kind of what Klinsmann's opinions of him were. I actually just finished having a one-on-one interview with Jurgen Klinsmann, and that'll be dropping on goal.com in a bit. His response to Feilhaber's comments, and it's pretty interesting stuff. I think Klinsmann made a pretty good case for in his defense.
Well, we're all going to be looking forward to reading that later tonight or tomorrow morning on goal.com on those comments from head coach Jurgen Klinsmann. I'm glad you told us that. Ives, let's talk about TFC making the move, bringing in Clint Irwin. I like this move. I think Clint is going to have success here, especially with Drew Moore here with Toronto as well. He'll be comfortable, he'll be relaxed, and he'll have a preseason to work with his teammates. Talk about it.
No, I think it's a great pickup for Toronto. Obviously, goalkeeper was the one big question mark for them. I know they have a few young prospects in their system, but they needed someone with experience, someone quality, and obviously when you talk about international signings in the goalkeeper position, it's always there's always a little risk involved there, and instead they brought in a guy from MLS who's had success in MLS, and I think he should be the perfect fit for what they needed, and now at this point I think there's no excuses for TFC. They've solidified the defense, they've upgraded at goalkeeper, they have depth now, and it's up to Greg Vanney to make it all work.
LA Galaxy, the magician, Bruce Arena, the guy that I believe will go down in history as the greatest coach, the greatest mind in U.S. soccer, to me again, has done it this offseason, bringing in veterans like Mike McGee, Jeff Larinovich, and also making sure that he's got a solid keeper in Dan Kennedy, who I will never forget the season he had with Chivas USA, where they floundered, but he was on top of his game to keep his team in many games. Talk about this LA Galaxy team full of vets.
Well, I mean, it's still, the building process isn't over yet. Obviously, they had to part with Juninho and Omar Gonzalez, but Bruce Arena is not messing around with trying to revamp the roster. Dan Kennedy, I think, is clearly an upgrade over Donovan Ricketts. Losing Omar Gonzalez isn't going to be easy, but they've obviously been linked to Van Dam, the defender from Standard Liège, and they'll be hoping he can help. And obviously, I reported yesterday that Ashley Cole, that deal is now done, and he's on his way. And I know a lot of people have questions about it, and there's a lot of consternation about it, mainly because of the comments he made about MLS a few years back. But for me, you're talking about a guy that's going to cost them $300,000, and even though he didn't play at Roma, I think he's still good enough to come into MLS and play at a high level. If he takes it seriously, I think he'll take it seriously. He's going to be on a team with Gerrard and Keane, and I don't think those guys are going to let him, lollygag or not take it seriously. So I think he could actually end up being a really good signing for them.
Ives, I tweeted out Saturday, my reliable source tells me that Marco Borriello is on his way to MLS. If Didier Drogba does not return to Montreal, it looks like he will not return, that he will be on the top of the list for the impact. But also in play is New York City FC. He'd love to play with Pirlo, and Pirlo's pushing for that, and TFC is still in the mix. And I understand that he will make a decision quite soon. What have you heard?
Well, I mean, I don't know how I know I see if he's going to manage that, just because unless Borriello is going to take a serious pay cut. Right now you have 3 designated players in Pirlo, Lampard, and Villa, and obviously with the new targeted allocation money, you can bring in a player that makes up to $1 million. I don't know what Borriello would be asking for, but if he's willing to come for $1 million, then I think it could definitely happen. Obviously Montreal needs to replace Drogba. I think we all have accepted that he won't be back, and we all know Joey Saputo is not going to stand by and not, get his team a star player. So that'll be an interesting tug of war, and maybe Montreal will be on the losing end of the tug of war this time after beating out Chicago for Drogba last year.
Well, you talked about Chicago. That's my next team. They've got a lot to prove this year. New head coach, new direction. I love what Nelson Rodriguez has done early on. I really enjoyed the draft and what they did, and I think this could be the surprise sleeper team in 2016. Your thoughts?
I think it's early still. I mean, I need to see his full. I think I need to see the squad once they bring in all their veterans. I mean, the early on the veterans that they've picked up so far, I mean, haven't exactly been world beaters. I agree that they had a great draft. I thought they managed it excellently, and they brought in a trio of young players that I really like. When you talk about Brandon Vincent, obviously he can step in and start. Jonathan Campbell, I think, could end up playing significant minutes as a rookie. And then you have Alex Morel, who I was a huge fan of at the Combine. A really interesting attacking player who I think if he gets the minutes, he could be one of those prizes of the draft. But we need to wait and see how they do on the international market, see which players, Veljko Panovic and Nelson Rodriguez can get to come to Chicago. I know their owner isn't afraid to spend money, but now we have to see who they can bring in.
Portland Timbers, champs of 2015. Not a lot of off-season moves and acquisitions and trades. Can they repeat in 2016?
I think they've made a decent number of moves that I actually like, considering they lost. When you talk about losing Will Johnston, Rodney Wallace, now it's pretty much done deal. He's gone. Max Cerruti, Jorge Villafana, obviously is a huge loss for them, but they've also made some pretty smart pickups. Chris Clutie, I think, could step in and start for them and do well. Ned Grabovoy and Zarek Valentin, I think, are also 2 good pickups. And then you have Jack McInerney, who kind of steps in for that Max Cerruti spot as your kind of backup striker, number 2 striker. So I think they've managed to kind of fill the holes that were opened up for them. But I think next year, defending the title, I want to see someone like Lucas Milano take that next step and really show the quality that they expected him to have. Obviously, he had to adjust to the league coming into the middle of the season, but I think he's a guy that has so much talent that I think he could be a breakout star in 2016.
A lot of question marks for DC United. New England Revolution starting 2016. Great regular seasons, especially by DC United the last couple of years, but DC folds in the playoffs continuously. They can't get the job done. Ben Olsen, I'm sure, has a lot of pressure on him this year to go a lot farther than he did recently. Your thoughts?
It's going to be a rough year. It really is. The issue with DC is that they don't have much money to spend. Obviously, they're in a tough situation playing in RFK, and they don't have those revenue streams that maybe some other teams have, and they're not going to go get the $1 million DP players. They have to go and look for bargains, and when you do that, it just gets tough to kind of keep up with the other teams in the league. And they've done a pretty decent job of finding veterans, MLS veterans, and plugging them in getting results and grinding out results. But I think this year it's going to be really tough for them to continue to do that, especially when you talk about losing a guy like Perry Kitchen, who's the heart of their midfield. He's heading to Europe now. Now you lose Bill Hamid, who's apparently, he's injured now, and he's looking like he's going to be out. We're talking up to 6 months. I actually saw him over at StubHub Center here, and I'm in LA, and he doesn't look like he's playing anytime soon. He's going to be out for a while, and he's so big for them. So I don't know how DC's going to do it. To be honest with you, I think it could be one of those roller coaster years where they really hit bottom.
Lastly, before we let you go, let's talk about the 2 New York teams who you follow closely, and you followed them both last year, day in and day out. And I think that Dax McCarty and the Red Bulls can have a repeat. I'm picking them to go to the final and win it all this time. I like what the Red Bulls have done, and I think that they can go all the way and possibly win it all. New York City FC, it's a veteran-laden team. Patrick Vieira, first-year head coach, a lot of question marks there. Discuss both.
Well, I think the Red Bulls are going to be in the mix. Obviously, they're bringing most of their team back, unless they get forced into selling Mad Miazga, which is a possibility. I think they should be right there. I think they'll be in the top two or three. I still like Columbus. I think when you talk about both those teams, let's not forget that when Will Trapp came back from his concussion issues, they were for me the best team in the East. And you look at the record, and it bears that out. So when you have a healthy Will Trapp from day one, when you have all those additions that they made in the second half of the season, guys like Harrison Afful, Gaston Sarro, I think they, for me, are the number one team in the East. And the team that could challenge them is Toronto. If Greg Vanney figures it out, and if he gets all these puzzle pieces to fit, I think Toronto could find it. I know we say it all the time. This is the year, right? They make all these big signings. They're going to tear it up.
I think a lot of TFC fans have just said to me to tell you, when you're in town, dinner's on them. Make sure you hook up with them, because just for that, they'd love to hear that and to take you out for dinner, Ives.
Yeah, they've made smart moves. When you talk about Will Johnson, I'm a huge Will Johnson fan. I think he's going to be perfect for Michael Bradley and helping Michael Bradley kind of get the best out of him. I think Josie Altidore year 2 with him and Giovinco having more of an understanding, I think that's going to help. Obviously, Drew Moore is a big upgrade. Beta Shore is a big upgrade, huge upgrade from what they had. Ahmed Kantari, talk about one of the worst signings in recent memory. And Jackson, who was never a right back. So I think they've addressed all their questions. So, again, it comes down to Greg Vanney. You want to talk about coaches who have pressure? He has pressure. And if they get off to a bad start,
he's gone.
Feel the heat.
Yeah, I think he's gone. I think from what I understand from my sources, and I like Greg Vanney as a person, as a human being, and as a coach. I've spent a lot of time with him the last year and a half, so I like the man. And I don't like to see any man lose his job. But I believe that road trip will basically seal his fate if he comes home with only 1 win and 1 tie. If he goes 4-4, or he comes home with maybe 6-7 points, I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity really for him, because he has, there's no excuses now. You've addressed all your needs. You have all that talent there, and you have to win. And I think it's going to be a great chance for him to show that he's up to the challenge. And if he gets the job done, people are going to. He could be the new Jason Christ, the new young coach that everyone talks about.
Ives, as we close it out and we let you go, just on a side note, talk a little bit about the NASL and where they're at right now. The battle with MLS. The battle also with USL. I think USL has overtaken the NASL. And I was just speaking to Alessandro Nesta, Miami FC, there in their first year. San Antonio leaving, Atlanta folding. A lot of question marks. Give us your thoughts.
I wouldn't worry too much about NASL. I like the ownership groups that they have there. Obviously it's still a work in progress, and they're still figuring some things out. And USL obviously has the backing of MLS. But I don't know if I could say that USL has overtaken NASL. I'm not ready to go there just yet. I think NASL, I actually like the things they have in store for the next couple of years. If they can continue on expanding in the markets that have needs, that have teams that don't have teams, I think they could do well. I actually like the growth that NASL has had in the last couple of years, and the quality of play. I think is sadly it's not followed as much obviously as MLS. But from what I've seen, the quality of play in NASL has improved quite a bit over the last 2-3 years, and I think it's going to keep heading in that direction.
Outstanding. When can we see that story about Jurgen Klinsmann? Will that be up later tonight or tomorrow? Where can our listeners and viewers see it?
Hopefully in the next hour or so on goal.com. I got to get to work on that right now, actually. So, yeah, hopefully in the next hour or two.
Outstanding. I really appreciate you joining us. Congratulations on that great interview with Jurgen Klinsmann. Continued success, and thank you again for joining us, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
That is Ives Galarcep, one of the best in the business. This guy is a massive, massive success in all of North American soccer. Follow him on Twitter. He is a genius, a guy that knows his stuff inside out. And this interview with Jurgen Klinsmann, he's going to respond back to Benny Feilhaber. I can't wait to read the response back from Jurgen Klinsmann, because he doesn't mince his words, Jurgen, and he doesn't care. He'll say it, and he'll shoot straight from the hip. But hey, I like what Benny Feilhaber said too. I don't understand why the guy never got a sniff. Him, Dax McCarty. There was a time as well, Mike McGee, never got an opportunity, if I'm not mistaken, under Klinsmann. Maybe I think he got a couple times, if that. But these are guys that should be given a shot for Team USA, at least in some World Cup qualifying games against some of the lesser-known CONCACAF nations to see what they can bring to the table. I mean, it's mind-boggling, really, really mind-boggling. We'll take a quick commercial break. Coming back, we'll tee up the shows coming up next week right here on nextsportstar.com. Stay tuned.